what would happen if you stopped making yourself available to everyone? No instant replies. No explaining every decision. No saying yes when every part of you wants to say no. No putting your own life on hold because someone else's urgency suddenly becomes your responsibility. Then watch carefully. Some people will respect your space. Some will question your change. And a few will disappear completely. That's when you'll discover a truth most people never see. Not everyone misses you. Some simply miss having unlimited access to you. Those are two very different things. And understanding that difference may change the way you see every person in your life. Most people never discover it because they've been taught that being constantly available is a sign of kindness, that replying immediately means you're caring, that sacrificing your own peace makes you a good person. But what if everything you've been taught about always being there for everyone has slowly been stealing pieces of who you are? Think about your own life. How many times have you answered a message while trying to enjoy dinner with your family? How many times have you picked up your phone the moment it buzzed, even though you desperately needed a moment of silence? How many times have you agreed to help someone while quietly wishing they had never asked? Most people don't notice these moments because they seem small. Every unnecessary yes, every forced smile, every apology for protecting your own time, every moment you ignore yourself to avoid disappointing someone else. Little by little, you disappear, not because someone forced you to, but because you slowly traded your peace for approval. The frightening part is that this doesn't happen overnight. It happens so gradually that one day you wake up feeling emotionally exhausted. Without understanding why, you blame work, you blame stress, you blame life. But rarely do you ask the real question: how much of my exhaustion comes from living for everyone except myself? Psychology has revealed something uncomfortable about human nature. Most people aren't afraid of being alone. They're afraid of disappointing others. So they stay available, always reachable, always helpful, always ready to fix problems that were never theirs to solve, not because they want to, but because somewhere along the way, they started believing their worth depended on how useful they were. The mind learns quickly. If saying yes earns acceptance, but saying yes, it's sacrificing yourself avoids a rejection. It keeps sacrificing until your identity quietly becomes tied to meeting everyone else's expectations. And that's where the trap begins. Because the moment your value depends on being needed, you stop asking one of the most important questions you'll ever face. Who am I when nobody needs me? That question makes many people uncomfortable because it forces them to separate who they truly are from the role they've been performing. Some spend decades playing the role of the peacemaker. Others become the rescuer, the dependable friend, the perfect employee, the child who never causes trouble, the partner who always understands, the one who never complains. At first, these roles feel rewarding. People praise you, depend on you, appreciate you, but over time, the role becomes a prison. Because now people don't just expect your kindness, they expect your availability. And expectations have a dangerous habit. The more consistently you meet them, the more invisible your sacrifices become. Eventually, people stop appreciating what you do. They simply assume you'll always be there, not because they're evil, but because human beings quickly become accustomed to what is constantly available for. Think about the air you breathe. You rarely notice it, not because it isn't valuable, but because it's always there. The same thing happens when you never create healthy boundaries. Your presence becomes expected instead of appreciated. Your kindness becomes ordinary instead of meaningful. And without realizing it, you've taught the world that your time, your attention, and your emotional energy have no limits. But they do, more than you realize. Every conversation drains a little. Every unnecessary argument takes something. Every emotional burden you carry for someone else quietly empties your own reserves. Your mind was never designed to carry everyone's problems. Yet, many people spend years doing exactly that. Then they wonder why they feel anxious, why they can't sleep, why they constantly feel overwhelmed. Maybe the problem isn't that life asks too much of you. Maybe you've forgotten that you're allowed to say, "Not today," because becoming unavailable isn't about rejecting people. It's about refusing to abandon yourself. And once you understand why your mind became addicted to always being available, you'll begin to see your entire life differently. Because the greatest battle isn't learning how to say no. The greatest battle is understanding why saying no feels so difficult in the first place. And that's exactly where our journey leads next. Why your brain becomes addicted to being needed. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to ignore your phone when it lights up with a new notification, even when you're exhausted, even when you've promised yourself you'll rest? A part of you still wants to look, not because every message matters, but because your brain has learned to expect something from it. Attention, connection, recognition. Over time, that tiny notification becomes more than a sound. It becomes a reward. Now replace the phone with people. A friend calls because they need advice. A co-worker asks for one more favor. A family member expects you to solve another problem. Someone sends a message saying, "Can we talk?" And almost without thinking, you respond. Not because you always have the energy, but because somewhere inside you, helping others has become tied to feeling valuable. This is one of the quietest psychological traps a person can fall into. The need to feel needed. At first, it feels harmless, even noble. After all, caring about people is a beautiful quality. Supporting those you love is part of being human. But there's a line so subtle that most people never notice when they cross it. It's the moment your identity begins to depend on someone else's dependence. Think about the last time someone thanked you for always being there. It probably felt good. That feeling isn't imaginary. Your brain naturally rewards experiences that strengthen connection and belonging. For thousands of years, belonging to a group increased the chances of survival. Being rejected often meant facing danger alone. Although the modern world has changed, your brain still carries ancient survival instincts. It doesn't always distinguish between physical danger and social rejection. That's why criticism can feel like a threat. Why being ignored can feel painful. Why disappointing someone can create guilt that lingers for hours or even days. Your nervous system isn't weak. It's doing exactly what it evolved to do. The problem begins when those survival instincts quietly take control of your life. Imagine a young child. Every time they're quiet, helpful, easy to manage, adult smile, they receive praise, affection, approval. Without realizing it, the child starts learning an invisible lesson. If I make other people happy, I'll be loved. It's a lesson many people carry into adulthood. Only now, the classroom has changed. Instead of trying to please parents, they try to please everyone. Their boss, their partner, their friends, even strangers. And every time they succeed, their brain whispers the same message. Good, keep doing that. Little by little, helping becomes obligation. Kindness becomes pressure. Generosity becomes exhaustion. The strange part is that most people don't even realize it's happening, because from the outside, it looks like kindness. From the inside, it feels like fear. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of losing relationships. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of no longer being important. So they answer every message, accept every invitation, fix every conflict, carry emotional burdens that were never theirs. Not because they want to, but because they no longer know who they are without being the reliable one. This is why becoming unavailable feels so uncomfortable. It isn't simply changing a habit. It's challenging an identity you've been building for years. Suddenly, you don't reply immediately, and guilt appears. You say no. Anxiety follows. You choose yourself for once, and a voice inside asks, "Am I becoming selfish?" notice something important. That voice rarely asks, "Am I abandoning myself?" Isn't that interesting? Many people feel guilty for protecting themselves, but feel perfectly comfortable abandoning themselves every single day. Psychology calls this conditioning. Philosophy calls it forgetting yourself. Either way, the result is the same. You slowly become a stranger to your own needs. Look around. How many people are living lives that revolve around keeping everyone else comfortable, while quietly carrying stress no one ever sees? They laugh, they smile, they show up, but inside, they're exhausted, not because life is impossible, but because they become emotionally available to everyone except themselves. Here's something worth thinking about. What if your constant availability isn't proof that you love people? What if it's proof that you're afraid of losing them? Those are not the same thing. Love gives freely. Fear gives desperately. Love respects boundaries. Fear destroys them. Love says, "I'm here because I choose to be." Fear says, "I'm here because I'm afraid of what will happen if I leave." That single difference changes everything. Because once fear becomes a reason you stay available, people begin to mistake your sacrifice for your personality. They stop asking whether you're okay. They simply assume you'll always manage somehow, and eventually you begin believing it too, until one day your body starts speaking the words your mouth never could. Burnout, anxiety, sleepless nights, emotional numbness, constant irritation over things that never used to bother you. These aren't always signs that you're doing too much. Sometimes they're signs that you've been carrying too many lives and neglecting your own. But here's the deeper question. If your need to be available was learned, can it be unlearned? Can someone who has spent years living for everyone else learn how to live for themselves without becoming cold, selfish, or disconnected? The answer isn't found in avoiding people. It's found in changing the relationship you have with yourself. Because the greatest freedom isn't having fewer responsibilities. It's no longer believing your worth depends on fulfilling every expectation placed upon you. And once you understand that, you'll begin to notice something surprising. The people who become upset when you create healthy boundaries often reveal more about their expectations than about your character. And that's where our journey becomes even more uncomfortable, because not everyone benefits when you start protecting your peace. Some people benefit far more from the version of you that never said no. The hidden cost of always being available. There is a price for always being available. The strange part is, most people don't realize they've been paying it for years. Because the cost isn't taken from your wallet. It's taken from your life. Think about the last week. How many times did you stop what you were doing because someone else wanted your attention? A text message, a phone call, a favor, a complaint, a problem that somehow became your responsibility. At the time, none of those moments seemed important. But life isn't stolen in dramatic ways. It's stolen one interruption at a time. One unnecessary obligation at a time. One, "I'll deal with my own needs later," at a time. And before long, later becomes never. Imagine carrying a backpack every single day. At first, it's empty. You barely notice it. Then someone asks you to carry a small stone. It's not heavy, so you agree. Later, someone else adds another, then another, then another. Weeks pass, months pass, years pass. The weight becomes normal. You no longer remember what it felt like to walk freely. That's exactly what emotional overload does. No single responsibility breaks you. It's the accumulation. The conversations you didn't want to have, the conflict you tried to fix, the emotions you absorbed from other people, the expectations you kept trying to meet. Each one seems harmless. Together, they become exhausting. This is why so many people wake up feeling tired. Even after sleeping, their body rested. Their mind never did, because while they were asleep, their thoughts were still replaying yesterday's arguments, tomorrow's responsibilities, someone else's disappointment, someone else's opinion. someone else's expectations. Notice the pattern? Everything revolves around someone else. Somewhere along the journey, you quietly disappeared from your own life. One of the greatest illusions modern life has created is the belief that being busy means being important. So people fill every hour, every minute, every notification, every request, as if constant availability were a badge of honor. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Being busy doesn't always mean you're building a meaningful life. Sometimes, it simply means you become too accessible to everyone else's priorities. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you spent an entire afternoon without feeling guilty for doing nothing? Without checking your phone every few minutes? Without wondering who might need you? Without feeling like you should be somewhere else? For many people, they can't remember, not because life is impossible, but because they've forgotten that rest is part of a healthy mind. Instead, they become addicted to productivity, addicted to usefulness, addicted to proving they matter. Yet the irony is impossible to ignore. The harder you work to become indispensable, the more replaceable you begin to feel. Because people stop seeing your effort, they simply start expecting it. Think about a candle. Its purpose is to give light, but if it burns continuously, without pause, eventually there is nothing left. The flame disappears, not because it wasn't bright enough, but because no one protected it. Now replace the candle with yourself. Every time you ignore your exhaustion, you burn. Every time you accept another responsibility you never wanted, you burn. Every time you sacrifice your peace to keep someone else comfortable, you burn. And one day, people will ask you, why have you changed? But they won't realize you didn't change. You simply ran out of energy pretending to be the person everyone expected. This is something many people experience in silence. They become irritable, not because they're angry, but because they're empty. They lose patience, not because they're cruel, but because they spent years giving away emotional resources they never replaced. Then comes guilt, the guilt of wanting space, the guilt of ignoring a message, the guilt of choosing themselves for once. It's remarkable, isn't it? Many people feel guilty for resting, but never question why they're expected to be available all the time. Somewhere, those expectations became normal, and anything that protects your peace began to feel selfish. But protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's maintenance. Just as your body needs sleep, your mind needs distance. Just as your muscles recover through rest, your emotions recover through stillness. Without that recovery, you don't become stronger. You simply become better at hiding your exhaustion. And perhaps that's the saddest part. The world often praises people who silently destroy themselves. The employee who never says no. The friend who's always available. The parent who carries every burden alone. The partner who sacrifices everything. From the outside, they look admirable. Inside, many are quietly falling apart, not because they lack strength, but because no one ever taught them that strength also means knowing when to stop. Real strength isn't measured by how much you can carry. It's measured by what you're willing to put down. Because not everything deserves your attention. Not every argument deserves your response. Not every request deserves your time. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your life. The moment you understand this, something inside you begins to change. You stop asking, how can I make everyone happy? And you begin asking, what kind of life am I creating if I keep abandoning myself? That question changes everything, because for the first time, the focus shifts, not toward becoming unavailable out of anger, but toward becoming intentional. Choosing where your energy goes, choosing who receives your attention, choosing relationships that nourish rather than consume. This isn't about building walls around your heart. It's about building doors. Doors that you decide when to open and when to close, because access is a privilege, not an obligation. And once you begin protecting that access, you'll discover something surprising. Some people will celebrate your growth. Others will resent it, not because you become a different person, but because you stop being the version of yourself they found convenient. And that reveals a truth many people spend their entire lives avoiding. Sometimes, the people who complain the loudest about your boundaries were benefiting the most from your lack of them. That realization isn't easy, but it might be the first step toward genuine freedom. Because before you learn how to protect your peace, you must first understand why some people become uncomfortable the moment you do. And that is where our journey takes us next. Why some people resist your boundaries. The moment you begin protecting your peace, something unexpected happens. Not everyone celebrates. Some people become distant. Some become offended. Others suddenly accuse you of changing. At first, that reaction can be confusing. After all, you're still kind, still respectful, still willing to help. The only difference is you no longer abandon yourself to make everyone else comfortable. So why does that upset certain people? The answer has very little to do with your boundaries, and everything to do with the expectations people built around your availability. Think about a vending machine. Every time someone inserts a coin, a drink comes out, again, and again, and again. Now imagine one day, the machine suddenly stops working. The customer doesn't immediately think, maybe the machine needs maintenance. Instead, they become frustrated. Not because the machine is broken, but because it no longer behaves the way they expected. Human relationships often work in a similar way when people become accustomed to unlimited access, unlimited time, unlimited emotional support. They unconsciously begin expecting it, not because they're always selfish, but because consistency creates expectation, and expectation, when interrupted, often creates disappointment. This is why your first boundary feels louder than your 100 acts of kindness. People rarely notice everything you've given, but they immediately notice the first thing you stopped giving. Think about that for a moment. 100 times you said yes, nobody said a word. One time you said no, suddenly you're difficult. You've changed. You're selfish. Why? Because boundaries expose expectations that were previously invisible. This doesn't mean the people around you are bad. It means human beings naturally adapt to patterns. If you've always answered every late-night phone call, people expect you to answer. If you've always solved everyone's problems, people expect you to solve them. If you've always sacrificed your own plans, people begin believing your time belongs to them. Not because they consciously decided it should, but because repetition quietly teaches people what they can expect from us. The problem isn't kindness. The problem is teaching people that your kindness has no limits. Healthy relationships appreciate generosity. Unhealthy relationships become dependent on it. There's an important difference. Imagine visiting someone's house. The first time, you knock. They welcome you inside. The second time, you knock again. Eventually, imagine walking straight through the front door without asking. What changed? The house didn't. The owner didn't. The habit did. Access became normal. Now imagine one day, the door is locked. You probably feel surprised, maybe even frustrated, not because the homeowner did something wrong, but because your expectations had quietly changed. Many people have unknowingly left the doors of their emotional lives unlocked for years. Anyone can enter, anytime, with any problem, any crisis, any demand. And after enough time, closing the door feels rude, even though it was your door all along. One of the greatest misunderstandings about boundaries is a belief that they push people away. Healthy boundaries don't push away healthy people. They simply reveal unhealthy expectations. The people who genuinely care about you may need time to adjust, but they will respect your limits. Those who only valued your usefulness may resist them. That resistance can be painful, especially when it comes from people you've loved for years. A friend who suddenly calls you distant. A family member who says you become different. A co-worker who complains that you're no longer as helpful as you used to be. The temptation is to immediately return to your old habits, to apologize, to explain. to prove you're still a good person. But ask yourself something. If someone only appreciates you when you're sacrificing yourself, what exactly are they appreciating? You or your availability? Those are not the same thing. Real relationships grow stronger through honesty, not unlimited access. Real love respects limits. Control resents them. This is where many people become trapped. They confuse guilt with responsibility. They believe feeling guilty automatically means they've done something wrong. But guilt isn't always a moral compass. Sometimes, it's simply the emotional discomfort of breaking an old pattern. Think about learning to exercise. The first workout hurts. Not because exercise is harmful, but because your body is adapting to something unfamiliar. Boundaries work the same way. The first no feels uncomfortable. The first unanswered message creates anxiety. The first weekend you protect for yourself feels strange. Not because you're becoming selfish, but because your mind is adjusting to a healthier way of living. Growth often feels uncomfortable before it feels natural. Many people mistake that discomfort for evidence they're making the wrong decision. In reality, it may be evidence that they're finally making the right one. One of the deepest psychological truths is this: people don't always react to who you are. Sometimes they react to the version of you they've grown comfortable controlling. The moment that version disappears, they're forced to adjust. Some will, some won't. And that's okay, because your responsibility isn't to manage everyone's expectations. Your responsibility is to manage your own life. For years, you may have believed peace comes from making everyone happy. But real peace comes from no longer abandoning yourself in the process. There is incredible freedom in realizing that you are allowed to disappoint people. If disappointing them means finally being honest with yourself, read that again in your mind. Because it may be one of the hardest lessons you will ever learn. You can be kind without being constantly available. You can love people without carrying every burden they refuse to carry themselves. You can care deeply without losing yourself completely. That isn't selfishness. That's emotional maturity. And something remarkable begins to happen once you embrace it. The people who truly value you don't disappear. They adapt. They respect your time. They appreciate your honesty. They stop expecting unlimited access, because they understand that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, not endless sacrifice. But before you can experience that kind of relationship, you must first face something even more difficult: silence. Because once you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop proving, stop making yourself constantly available, silence enters your life. And for many people, silence feels terrifying until they discover it was never empty. It was the place where they finally began hearing themselves again. Silence changes more than your relationships. Silence has a strange reputation. Many people see it as weakness. Others mistake it for distance. Some even interpret it as rejection. Yet silence often reveals more than words ever can. The moment you stop explaining every decision, stop defending every choice, stop responding to every criticism, something unexpected begins to happen. The noise around you becomes quieter, not because the world has changed, because your attention has. For years, you may have believed every opinion deserved a response. Every accusation required a defense. Every misunderstanding demanded an explanation. It feels responsible. It feels mature. But is it? Imagine throwing a stone into a calm lake. The water reacts immediately. Ripples spread in every direction. Now imagine refusing to throw the stone at all. Nothing happens. The surface remains undisturbed. Your mind works in much the same way. Every unnecessary argument creates another ripple. Every attempt to convince people who have already made up their minds consumes mental energy you'll never recover. This is why emotionally intelligent people become increasingly selective with their words. Not because they've stopped caring. Because they've learned that not every battle deserves their attention. Some conversations are invitations to understanding. Others are invitations to chaos. Knowing the difference is a form of wisdom. Many people spend years trying to win arguments while quietly losing themselves. They explain, clarify, justify, repeat the same point from different angles. Hours disappear. Days pass. Nothing changes. The other person wasn't searching for truth. They were searching for confirmation. No explanation can satisfy someone who has already chosen their conclusion. One of life's hardest lessons is accepting that understanding cannot be forced. Some people will misunderstand you, even after you've explained yourself perfectly. Others will judge your intentions without ever asking your reasons. There comes a point where speaking more adds nothing. Silence becomes a stronger response. This doesn't mean suppressing your voice. It means recognizing where your voice has value. Imagine planting a seed. You don't dig it up every morning to check whether it's growing. You trust the process. Growth happens quietly. Character develops the same way, constantly announcing your plans. Seeking approval before every decision, defending every step, often delays the very progress you're trying to make. Confidence rarely needs an audience. It grows in private. Think about the strongest people you've ever met. Chances are, they weren't the loudest person in the room. They didn't interrupt everyone. They didn't compete for attention. There was something different about them. A calm presence, an inner stability. Their silence wasn't empty. It carried certainty. That kind of confidence cannot be borrowed. It is built through repeated moments of choosing peace over unnecessary conflict. There's another reason silence feels uncomfortable. It removes distraction. Without constant conversations, without endless notifications, without filling every quiet moment, you're finally left alone with your own thoughts. That can be frightening. Questions begin to surface. What do I actually want? Whose expectations have I been living under? Which goals are truly mine? What have I been avoiding? Many people stay busy because busyness protects them from these questions. Silence removes that protection. At first, it feels lonely. Eventually, it becomes liberating. You stop performing. You stop comparing. You stop measuring your worth through someone else's opinion. A different relationship begins to form, not with the world, with yourself. That relationship has been waiting patiently all along. It simply couldn't be heard beneath the noise. There is remarkable freedom in reaching a point where every message doesn't demand an immediate reply. Every criticism doesn't require a response. Every invitation doesn't become an obligation. You begin making decisions from clarity instead of pressure. The quality of your life changes, not because people stopped asking things of you, because you've learned that access to your attention is earned. Time becomes intentional. Energy becomes protected. Your presence becomes meaningful rather than automatic. Ironically, many relationships improve after this shift. Respect often grows where constant availability once existed. People begin recognizing your value because it is no longer unlimited. Scarcity has a way of reminding people what abundance made them overlook. Yet the greatest transformation happens where no one else can see it. Inside your own mind, for the first time in years, your thoughts belong to you again. No endless rehearsals. No imaginary arguments. No desperate need to prove yourself. Only clarity. And clarity changes decisions. Different decisions create different habits. Different habits reshape identity. Identity ultimately determines the direction of a life. Everything begins with a simple choice. Not to become distant. Not to become cold. Simply to stop giving every passing opinion permission to occupy your mind. That single decision creates space. And within that space, something remarkable begins to grow. A version of yourself that no longer needs constant reassurance to know who they are. But discovering that version requires one final step, because protecting your peace is only half of the journey. The other half is learning who you become. Once your life no longer revolves around everyone else's expectations. The person you become when you stop living for everyone else. There comes a moment in every person's life, not marked by applause, not celebrated by the world, A quiet moment, almost invisible, a moment when you realize you no longer need everyone's permission to become who you were meant to be. Nothing dramatic happens overnight. You don't suddenly become fearless. You don't wake up immune to criticism. You don't stop caring about people. Instead, something much more meaningful begins to change. You stop letting other people's expectations decide the direction of your life. For years, your choices may have been shaped by one silent question: what will people think? It influenced your decisions without asking for permission. It decided when you spoke, when you remained silent, what you wore, what dreams you pursued, even the opportunities you ignored because someone else might not approve. Many lives never reach their full potential, not because people lack talent, but because they spend too much energy managing other people's opinions. Imagine an artist who never paints the picture they truly want because they're worried it won't impress anyone. Imagine a writer who never publishes a book because someone might criticize it. Imagine a business owner who never starts because failure would be embarrassing. The tragedy isn't failure. The tragedy is never discovering what was possible. The prison was never locked. The door remained open the entire time. Fear simply convinced them not to walk through it. Freedom begins the moment your decisions become guided by values, rather than validation. That doesn't mean ignoring wisdom. It means learning the difference between advice and permission. Advice helps you grow. Permission keeps you waiting. Many people confuse the two. They postpone dreams, delay conversations, hide ideas, silence their opinions, all because they're waiting for someone else to tell them it's safe. Life rarely works that way. Growth asks for courage before it offers certainty. This is where your relationship with yourself changes forever. Instead of asking, will everyone understand me? You begin asking, am I being honest with myself? That single shift changes every area of your life. Your friendships become healthier. Your work becomes more meaningful. Your confidence becomes quieter, but stronger. You no longer chase attention. You attract respect. There's a difference. Attention is given to what is loud. Respect is earned by what remains consistent. People who truly know themselves don't feel the need to announce it. Their actions speak with confidence words rarely achieve. This doesn't happen because life becomes easier. Challenges remain. Criticism doesn't disappear. Misunderstandings still happen. The difference is those experiences no longer decide your identity. Imagine standing beneath a tree during a storm. The branches move wildly. Leaves fall. The wind refuses to stop. Yet the roots remain where they are. Real confidence looks like those roots. Life may shake your circumstances, but it no longer uproots your sense of self. That kind of stability cannot be purchased. It cannot be borrowed from motivational quotes. It is built each time you choose authenticity over approval. Each time you protect your peace without guilt. Each time you refuse to betray your values simply to fit in, little by little. A different person begins to emerge. Someone calmer, more thoughtful, more intentional. Not because they have all the answers, because they no longer panic when they don't. One remarkable thing starts happening during this transformation. You discover that solitude and loneliness are not the same experience. Loneliness is the pain of feeling disconnected. Solitude is the peace of finally enjoying your own company. Many people spend their lives avoiding solitude because they've never learned to befriend themselves. The moment that friendship begins, everything changes. Quiet mornings become enjoyable. Long walks become conversations with your own mind. Silence stops feeling empty. It becomes restorative. You stop reaching for distractions every time discomfort appears. Instead, you become curious. Why did that comment upset me? Why do I fear disappointing people? Why am I chasing a life that doesn't reflect my values? Those questions become teachers. Each honest answer brings you closer to the person you've always been beneath the expectations. Then something unexpected happens. You begin inspiring others, not through speeches, not through perfection, through example. People notice your calmness, your patience, Your ability to walk away from unnecessary conflict. Your refusal to seek validation from every passing opinion. Some will ask what changed. Others won't. Either way, your life becomes evidence that inner peace is possible. Perhaps the greatest reward isn't becoming admired. It's becoming free. Free to choose. Free to rest. Free to say no without guilt. Free to pursue a path that reflects your own convictions. Freedom is rarely handed to us. More often, it begins with a quiet decision. The decision to stop asking the world who you should become. And finally asking yourself, because no amount of approval can replace the peace that comes from living in alignment with your own values. And once you experience that peace, you'll realize something profound. The greatest relationship you will ever build is the one you have with the person you see in the mirror every single day. Everything else grows from there. If today's journey challenged the way you see yourself, don't let it end here. Transformation doesn't happen because you watch the video. It happens when one idea changes the way you live tomorrow. So before you leave, ask yourself one question. Where in my life am I still giving away access to people who haven't earned it? Sit with that question. Your answer may reveal more than you expect. If this video helped you see yourself from a new perspective, subscribe to ABFA Mind and join a community committed to understanding the human mind, questioning assumptions, and growing with intention. Think like a philosopher. Understand like a psychologist. Until next time, protect your peace, guard your attention, and never forget that the person who deserves your care the most is the one responsible for living your life.